Hey everyone, welcome back for Little Jays Talk. Today I'm going to be talking about my predictions for the Toronto Blue Jays for 2025. If you watched my last video, I already did predictions on the AL East, how I thought I saw the division shaping up and why I thought that. And today I'm just going to get a little bit more into the actual Toronto Blue Jays specific stuff. I projected them to come third in the division, which would mean I see them wrapping up either the second or third wild card spot. That's probably on like a little bit of an optimistic side. It'll depend how the AL as a whole shapes up, but it's a team. If everything goes well, I can see getting up to somewhere around that 87, 88, 89 wins in that range. It provided nothing terrible happens to the team, and obviously if there's a bad injury to one of their key players, if they lose a couple starters, if things like that start to happen, and they're not a contender by, the deadline, then you could see some major selling off. And in which case there's really no floor to how many losses they could have. But at that point, does it really matter? Do we care if it was 70 wins or 72 wins or anything like that? Like, if it gets to a point where we're selling off at the deadline, you almost want them to lose as many games as possible and just fire everybody, get the best draft pick, and move on. Hopefully it doesn't go that way. Hopefully it goes more the first scenario. But there are a fairly wide array of outcomes here, I will admit. I'd like to get my thoughts on why I think I see them being a fringe playoff team that can probably snag a wild card. And for that, I'm going to bring up the Fangraphs projections for 2025 for the Blue Jays roster. And Fangraphs does tend to agree with me. Like, they have us around, I think it was about a 43% chance at making the playoffs, which feels right to me. It's basically, a little bit of good luck, we get into a wild card, a little bit of bad luck, we fall off. I see us as basically a coin flip to get in. And last year we were at around 74 wins. So it's really, where are we seeing these, 10 plus wins that we're going to need to get in coming from? And the first culprit for me is Bo Bichette. Fangraphs has him here for 3.8 FWAR. I think that is a pretty fair assessment. It might even be a little bit low. The way that Bo has looked in the spring, just health-wise, I don't really care about the stats, but just health-wise and how hard he's swinging and the type of contact he's making have looked really good. And I think we're going to see Bo Bichette back up in the 20-plus home run range. And getting him the most at-bats this year in the leadoff spot, just that difference between having a healthy Bo Bichette there doing his normal, leading the league in hits type thing, over what we suffered through with George Springer last year, which was basically pretty much an unplayably bad leadoff hitter. So I think that upgrade alone, is got to be worth at least a few wins by itself. And then you go on to Vladdy Guerrero, who's going to be batting second. I'm hoping that they're accurate with this 4.8 wins. Vladdy really looked good. Basically, after the first month of the season last year onward, he looked really, really strong. He's finally got some support behind him in the lineup, and I think he'll never have the huge home run total again that he had in 2021. I don't think he'll never get up to, 48, 50 home runs again, in my opinion. He's just not really that type of hitter. He's more of a gap to gap line drive guy, who does put some out for sure, but he's more in that 30 to 35 range for me. And then just as long as he's getting up to the 100 RBIs and getting on base, that's really, him in the 2 spot, getting a lot of at-bats. I think you can't really go wrong there. And then Anthony Santander obviously is another addition that we just didn't have last year. We didn't have the power bat. And I don't see any reason why his home run total should drop off significantly. And it looks like Fangraphs agrees with me. They've got him down for 3.0 FWAR and 127 weighted runs created plus. So they've basically got him down as being a very, very productive bat. We all know his flaws, though. Like, he will have a lower on-base percentage. You're just hoping he runs into, say, 30 to 35 plus home runs. And again, another guy that can drive in around 100 RBIs. And we really needed that last year. So I think just the Bo Bichette return in place of Springer, and then the Anthony Santander finally being that power bat behind Vlad, I think that right by itself is probably like a 6-win swing or something like that. Like a very noticeable, maybe not 6, but a noticeable improvement. Then you tack on having a regular everyday second baseman in Andres Gimenez, who I know his bat is a little bit on the noodle bat side of things. We're hoping from an on-base perspective, he can at least get on and cause some havoc on the bases, but I don't expect him to be a real slugger. But he is slated to get 4.2 F-WAR, and that's largely due to his glove. And it's not as obvious to fans as you're watching the games just how valuable really elite defense is. But these analytics here, like this WAR calculation, there's something to it. When a guy's putting up, platinum gloves and is rating out as arguably the best defender in all of baseball at any position, that has real value. It saves your pitchers a lot of outs, it shortens innings, and it really has a cumulative value on the roster as a whole that oftentimes does get overlooked when a guy is this elite defensively. Alejandro Kirk is a little bit of the same thing. We're so quick to jump on his lack of hitting when he's struggling. And even then, he's around a league average hitter. Like, he's maybe a little bit below league average, but then you factor in for a catcher, and he bumps back up to being kind of average or maybe right around there. And then his framing, his defense, his throwing runners out got a lot better as the year went on. And basically every site projects him to have a very good year this year. And seeing all these exit velocities that he's putting up in spring training, he's gotten in better shape. He's ready to take on the everyday workload. And he's been hitting the ball hard. He, as you've seen with the automatic balls and strike system, he is a savant when it comes to knowing the strike zone. He is so good with that thing, and he's so good at framing that he's another guy where the defensive prowess can sometimes get overlooked because the bat isn't fantastic. But he and Jimenez, if they can just put up league average type numbers, which I think they're both capable of, along with providing that Gold Glove caliber defense, tremendous, I'll call it an ad in Kirk's case because he is taking over as the everyday catcher that we saw after Danny Jansen got traded. So yeah, those are some marginal improvements over what we were running out last season off of a second base and catcher. And again, just, adding a win here and a win there. George Springer, moving him down the lineup is not a bad thing. He's, I don't know how long he is for this lineup. I think in George Springer's case, the worst case scenario for us would be that he looks trash and then has little glimmers of hope. Like he comes up and goes 3 for 4 in a game, hits 2 home runs, gets hot for 4 days, and then sucks again. And then, rinse and repeat and just kind of like has a bad week and then pops off a little bit and just continues to give you that glimmer of hope so that he stays in the lineup. I'm really hoping that he either just does good, where he's, just a league average hitter, good defensively, puts up his 19 or 20 home runs like he did last year, steals a few bases, plays really solid defense, or he's terrible and he's just unplayable and he gets moved to the bench and ultimately maybe DFA'd or at least just kept as a bench option. Like I said, the worst case scenario is probably he hangs around in that middling, like 620 OPS, 650 OPS, but he keeps doing the peaks and valleys and shows little glimpses and then just ultimately gets way more playing time than he deserves. I'm hoping he either goes positive or just all the way negative and gets cut. Alan Roden, he's a real wild card here because we've never seen him in the major leagues. Now, there's people a lot smarter than me who look at his analytics, look at his swing approach, look at his bat velocity, his swing decisions, and say, yeah, this guy's ready for the major leagues. He's going to be good. And that's pretty widespread along a lot of the analysts. A lot of people are really sold on Alan Roden. Not being a superstar. He is a rookie. He's 25. He's a grown man, but he is a rookie. But to provide that above league average hitting and getting on base, stealing some bases, very competent defensively. And Fangraphs here rewards him with a 1.5 F-WAR projection. And that wouldn't even be in a full season. You see here 427 plate appearances. So kind of a 2/3 of a season, probably platooning, he takes on the righties and then a Davis Schneider or a George Springer ultimately takes over batting against lefties. But he could be one where if he's as good as some people say he is, that could be a real infusion to the lineup. Ernie Clement, we know what to expect of him. He's another guy. His bat is essentially just league average, swings a lot, makes a lot of contact, rarely strikes out, but rarely walks, puts the ball in play a ton. He's fast. He plays very good defensively. That's where most of his, value comes from. There will be a theme there, but there are some positions where I'm okay with banking on the defense, and that's normally like a shortstop, a center fielder, a catcher for sure. And then if you had to, like third base and second base are also very valuable defensively. So that's more where it's like, okay, yeah, he's very competent defensively. He's going to have a bat first guy or a more bat first guy in Will Wagner, and then also a Relvis Martinez potentially later on in the year. So there are going to be bat first options if we need the uptick in offense. But just as a safe floor, Ernie Clement providing that borderline Gold Glove defense and just around a league average bat is a nice floor to have in place there with, as I say, more upside in Will Wagner and Relvis Martinez as the year goes on, and maybe even an Addison Barger if we need that infusion of offense. Center field, Nathan Lucas is put in here for 0.4 F4. That's largely because Dalton Varsho will be back within a couple of weeks. So Nathan Lucas, basically best case scenario, he hits righties quite well. In his short sample size last year, he had over an 800 OPS versus righties in the major leagues. So that's very good. I don't know if he can keep that up. I'm really looking forward to seeing. He's an older guy, he's going to be 31 mid-season, but again, he did get a taste of major league pitching, and he did hit it quite well from what we saw. And he's always done well in AAA as well. So there's nothing there that really screams, he's bound to regress or anything like that. Like, he just seems like he'll be above average batter against right-handed pitching. And his defense is solid. We'll also have Miles Straw coming in as a defensive replacement there. He's Gold Glove caliber defense all over the field, all over the outfield, I should say. We've got Davis Schneider on the bench. We've got Will Wagner that I mentioned. Tyler Heineman, if he's in 50 games, that's not ideal, but it is what it is. We'll see how the season plays out and if there's room for upgrading there later on in the year. So that's where I've got it from the hitting point of view. Like I say, there's definitely some reason to feel optimistic about at least getting a half dozen wins out of these guys over what we saw last year, just running rookies out all the time and how we traded everybody away and, the kind of Kevin Kiermaier experiment and the Justin Turner. Justin Turner wasn't awful, but he wasn't good either, especially not for a DH. So just seeing some of these new faces or guys that are going to get more playing time, I'm optimistic that we will get some more wins out of the hitting side of things this year. Going down to the pitching. Pitching is what really, really hamstrung us last year. That bullpen being the worst in baseball was just, you can't come back from that. That's insurmountable. So that's another low-hanging, I should steal a Ross Atkins quote, like the low-hanging fruit there. That's a really spot where I'm looking to make up some wins, is just not being absolutely terrible in the bullpen. Like last year, Eric Swanson got hurt in spring training, like this year. Jimmy Garcia got shut down. Jordan Romano essentially didn't pitch last year. Like, we never saw a healthy Jordan Romano. He missed a bunch of time when he was there. He was injured. It was ugly. We didn't have a closer the whole year. And then we traded away Jimmy Garcia at the deadline. So we really, really leaning on, Chad Green, Zach Pop, and just guys you don't want to be leaning that much on. I like Chad Green, but just there was no depth behind him through injuries and obviously once we decided to sell off. So that right there is I'm seeing our biggest spot for just obvious improvement. Jeff Hoffman is a good closer. It's all about health. How healthy is he going to be? There's no reason to think he'll get hurt. I know we heard about the contracts getting rejected by the Orioles and Braves, but apparently that was nothing new. That's just been stuff that's kind of been going on and flagged in his shoulder for a while. So I don't have any real concerns about him getting into 50 games as a closer this year. I don't see it as being any more of an injury concern than you're worrying about with any pitcher. Like, pitchers, in their very nature of pitchers, is just that they're volatile and they are injury prone. It's hard to make it through the season with your staff in order. So I don't see him as being any more of an elevated injury risk. Followed by Chad Green, Jimmy Garcia, Nick Sandlin, Lovelady, Barnes, Brandon Little, and the long relief they've got Yariel Rodriguez. And I think Yariel Rodriguez is another interesting one because he's we don't know what to expect out of him out of the bullpen. I like him in the long relief role, and I think that he can thrive there. Last year, he put up around a 4 ERA, and it didn't feel that way. It almost felt like he was worse last year, but his numbers really weren't that terrible. This year, he projects out to be around the same. They've got him to a 3.97 WAR. 3.97 ERA and a 0.8 WAR. So for him, it's going to come down to how many innings does he pitch. That's going to be a big contributor to his overall WAR. For a bullpen arm, they just don't pitch enough innings. That's why WAR is kind of a shoddy metric to use for relief arms, because long relievers typically get their numbers boosted just from the sheer innings that they pitch. They've got him in for 107 innings pitched, so that's probably assuming there's going to be a spot start in there, things like that. They've got him in for a nice Ks per nine. The 9.46 K per nine is good to see. But overall, I'm just seeing so much more depth this year, especially when you factor in Ryan Burr, who looked really solid and who the metrics really like, and Eric Swanson, not Zach Pop, Eric Swanson coming back. So once you get a couple of those arms back, there will be injuries in this bullpen for sure. It happens every single year. Chad Green will miss a week or two here and there. Jimmy Garcia will miss some time. Hoffman might miss a couple weeks. Bullpen arms do come down with little lingering issues and have to take breaks. But we've got some nice arms in the form of Easton Lucas can come up potentially as like a long reliever. We've got Fluharty. We've got, what was his name there? Ryan Jennings, I think. He looked really good. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank there on a couple of these guys' names. But we do have some all right depth. And then on the starting side of things, we've got Jose Barrios, Gosman, Scherzer, Bassett, Francis. And really, there's no clear ace in this staff, but there's also nobody that you're really concerned about other than Max Scherzer with his thumb. But in terms of actual productivity and, the quality of innings they're going to be giving you, I feel really good about all five of those. There's no real red flags. They're all going to put up, a 4 ERA or better, in my opinion, like maybe a 4.1 or something like that. But they'll all be pretty good. And then it's just a matter for me of the depth. The depth is a huge problem in the starting rotation, but I think most teams have that problem. Like you go look at the Yankees rotation, what happened after they lost Garrett Cole, and all of a sudden, they're really struggling and having to kind of shuffle around and try to find some guys to fill innings. So the depth will be a problem. Jake Bloss finished spring looking good. I don't know if he would be next in line, probably not. But, there's Eric Lauer, again, showed some glimpses and then also got beat up. Easton Lucas, I don't know if he's ready, but he's one of the guys that could come up and give you some bulk innings. And then we'll just wait and see at who's projected to do, well in the given moment. We'll also get Alek Manoah back later on in the year. And then Ricky Tiedemann should come back in the second half as well. Although I picture him probably going into like a bullpen role just for at least the remainder of this year. So yeah, there's definitely concerns in the pitching side, but I think that there always are. Very few teams feel, outside of maybe the Dodgers and potentially maybe the Diamondbacks, a couple of teams, Mariners, there's a handful of teams that probably feel quite good with their starting pitching depth. But, most teams have question marks once you get past number 5. So it's one of those things where the injuries there are really going to dictate, do we come up with the higher end of our projections or the lower end and have to sell off? That's really going to be dictated by overall health and a little bit of good luck here and there. So that's what I've got. That's where I see us making up the headway. That's where I see us improving from last year. I think, again, just to do a quick recap, the Bo Bichette coming back in full swing, the Anthony Santander edition, solidifying second base with Jimenez, and then going straight to some of the young guys early on, whereas we waited for Spencer Horwitz last year and we waited too long. Going straight to some of these guys with the hot bats that look like they should be good, like an Alan Roden. Just not messing around this year. Getting your best lineup out there early and often, and really pushing for wins in April, just as important as the September wins. And then on the pitching side of things, like I say, just not having the league worst bullpen, like the literal worst in baseball, even if we can bump this up to like a league average, which is what I think we can do here. That's my justification for being like, oh, hey, where do you see, say, 12 wins coming from 74, jumping up to that 86, 87, 88, like up in that upper 80s? That's where I see it, is just improved bullpen, a couple key additions in the lineup, and then just hopefully a little bit better injury luck with our bullpen than last year. But anyways, that's my thoughts on it. So like I say, I see us being around a second or third wildcard team. Where do you guys see us finishing? Let me know in the comments below. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.